Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Amit Kukreja Show. This is episode number 3. As always, our show is sponsored by the startup that I'm building. If you're interested in learning more about that startup, the link to the video describing that startup is in the description. I'm not going to bore you talking about the startup because you probably don't care about the startup. But if you're watching the show, which no one is because we have 2 subscribers, but that's okay because one day there will be more. It's just not right now. And that's okay. Things happen in their own time, and you got to deal with that. You got to be okay with that. But that's okay. You got to be okay with talking to 0 people in this camera and setting up this mic and all this stuff, but eventually that will change. As always, yes, the show is sponsored by my startup. Definitely go check it out if you are interested in that startup. If not, then let's get into today's news. It is, I don't know why I'm holding the mic like this, like I'm a singer. It's February 16th, 2021. So let's talk about the things that are going on. First thing we're going to talk about today is SPACs. These are special purpose acquisition companies. We have an article here from CNBC. They used to be a joke in Silicon Valley, and now they are going mainstream. So the reason this is coming up is because venture capitalists have pointed to SPAC announcements by SoFi, 23andMe, and Desktop Metal, these are all different companies, as a clear sign that higher quality companies are choosing that route to the public market. Now, what does that mean? Let's break this down. I want to talk a little bit about what special purpose acquisition companies are and what they mean for you as a potential investor and what they mean in terms of just getting more investing knowledge. When a company goes public, that company has the ability to take its ability to raise funds essentially from the public. What does that mean? The public markets. People like you and me who have brokerage accounts by Robinhood or E-Trade or TD Ameritrade, whatever it is, and we can upload our, I said upload like it's content, we can upload our money from our bank of accounts, transfer it into those brokerage firms and buy stocks. So Facebook is a public company, right? That means that Facebook has millions of public shares. That means Zuckerberg owns some shares, the board owns some shares, institutional investors own some shares, but the majority of the shares are owned by the public. That means public investors like you and I can all buy 1 share of Facebook. Why is that beneficial to Facebook? Because the value of a company is determined through the share price, essentially. That's why in like sort of mainstream, like really rigid capitalism discussions, the only thing you should care about when building a company is shareholder value and shareholder maximization. And that's like how much bottom line is going back to the shareholder to increase the prices for the shares they're holding, because that keeps them investing in the company. Things have changed. Now we're more in what Mark Benioff likes to call, he's the CEO of Salesforce, which is like some $200 billion, cloud computing company. Stakeholder capitalism, which is caring about the employees, caring about the environment, caring about diversity, inclusion, all of these different things. So we're not really only in the shareholder mold of capitalism anymore, but nonetheless, the way you make money off public markets is the share price. So if you bought Facebook at $40, which is what I believe it IPO'd, which was the initial public offering, that is the price that is initially offered to the public to buy shares at once they officially get on a stock exchange. The most famous one is the NASDAQ. Or the New York Stock Exchange, I think, like kind of the same thing. Basically, the big thing in New York where everyone rings the bell and there's like, oh, our company's public. Then today you would be making a like 6x return, right? Because Facebook stock's like 240 right now. So 6 times 40 is 240. So that $40 investment in 2012 would have turned into a $240 gain in 2021. Not too bad, for 9 years. Now, if you bought 1 share, you would have made $150. If you had bought 15,000 shares, you would have made that times 15,000, right? Which is really, really the benefits of a company going public and you as an investor being able to make money off a company that's ultimately going public. That's what the traditional IPO going public process is. Now, special purpose acquisition companies are uniquely important because the way a company goes public has a lot of steps to it. Usually they go through an investment bank. You can't just like register to go public. They have a ton of different processes in between. And usually like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, one of these big companies, facilitates the process of taking the company public. I don't know exactly how they do it, but that's what they do. A SPAC company is really interesting because a SPAC company basically is listed on the stock exchange publicly. You can trade it, but it's listed as a special purpose acquisition group. And usually they're ranged from like $10 to $15, the stock price. When that stock price jumps is when that special purpose acquisition company merges with the company that's trying to go public, and then boom, that new company becomes the stock price of the actual company that's going public. So let's say Facebook went public through a SPAC. about 6 to 7 months before Facebook officially goes public, there would be a special purpose acquisition company that would be on the stock exchange. No one knows if it's for Facebook or not. You just are taking a bet that if you buy shares of that company and that is Facebook and it's supposed to open at 50, then if you bought it for 10, you made a $40 profit that day because that turns into Facebook, right? And that means it jumps the price up immediately. The goal of special purpose acquisition companies was to democratize the IPO process, right? And what does that mean? The IPO process is usually sort of reserved for hedge funds and big banks and stuff that like actually take a company public. And the only people that benefit from it going public through the fees and all this stuff are the banks that actually make it public. A special purpose acquisition company now is publicly traded, which means me as a consumer, I can buy shares of this not knowing what it's going to be. It could be a dud, but if it is, the Airbnbs of the world and it goes public, then that share price immediately jumps up. And I have now benefited, I have profited off a company going public as a retail investor, which didn't exist. It existed a while ago. It just wasn't a main thing, which wasn't mainstream 10, 15 years ago when companies were not going public through special purpose acquisition companies. So reading from this company from this article, in a SPAC, a group of investors raise money for a shell company with no underlying business. That's the SPAC. The SPAC goes public, generally at $10 a share, and then starts hunting for a company to acquire. So that SPAC is now trying to figure out which company can we merge with. And usually, sometimes they already know this, before, and this is just the due diligence they have to do. When it finds a target and a deal is agreed upon, the SPAC and the company pull in outside investors for what's called a PIPE, or a private investment in public equity. The PIPE money goes into the target's company's balance sheet in exchange for a big equity stake. The SPAC investors get stock in the acquired company, which becomes the publicly traded entity through what's known as the de-SPAC, right? That's where everyone else gets the benefit from this. One major advantage, SPACs allow companies to provide forward-looking projections, which companies typically don't do in an IPO prospectus because of a liability risk. So basically, SPACs give the investors, the founders, and the public the ability to benefit off the company going public from doing future projections and from literally being able to buy shares of the potential company before the SPAC actually acquires the company that they're going to acquire. So I just wanted to bring that up because it seems like SPACs are becoming a lot more mainstream. If you just type in purpose acquisition groups on your brokerage account, you'll find a ton of them. And if you invest in them, those could potentially blow up to be, multi-billion-dollar companies if they acquire a certain company and then you benefit off the share price increasing. So I'm really getting interested in SPACs just because it is more of a democratization of finance, but I guess we'll see where it goes from here. I hope that helps you guys understand a little bit more about SPACs. It's a very cool name for it, SPACs. Okay. On to our next story for the day. What are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about Finland's Wolt. This is the name of a food delivery app. Raises $530 million in venture capital to try to take on Amazon. I thought this was interesting to talk about because, we don't really talk about companies in Finland. Like we talk about companies in, the United States and, Europe, I guess, but we don't talk about, I don't know. Finland is not one of the big hot tech startup scenes. So because of this, I wanted to get a little bit more educated on what Finland is trying to do over there, what they're actually trying to get done. So the funding round in the 6-year-old company was led by ICO Capital, and it brings total investment in the firm to $856 million. So there's been $850 million bucks poured into this company. Pretty big deal, if you ask me. Wolt did not disclose its latest valuation, but it said it will use the money to continue expanding beyond restaurants. So essentially, it's a food delivery app, right? And this is really important to me and unique to me because the CEO said, we are huge believers that the next wave of e-commerce will go from same week and same day delivery to delivery within the next 30 minutes or so as the standard. That's what we're focused on building in all of our markets, starting with the restaurant. Why is this important to talk to about? Two things. A, Amazon has fundamentally ushered in a new era of how consumers try and eventually get an experience with a product. Before Amazon, there was no get your product in 2 days, right? And now if you delay it even more than a week, you're probably not going to get repeat business. Like your product has to be pretty special for people to wait. I feel like my hair is crazy, but for people to wait a large amount of time in order to get their product. And the real unique thing about this is now companies in Finland, right, that are not the hot tech startup capitals of the world, are actually able to use Amazon's competitive business model to apply to their same logic. They are literally trying to get your food within the next 30 minutes, right? And I think it's the same sort of idea about how e-commerce is generally trending, which is that companies want to deliver products and services as soon as possible because they know that is the gateway to an effective experience, even more so than the product, right? Like the product matters, but the experience of getting the product, the experience of unboxing the product, the experience of receiving the product within a short amount of time, I think is as important as the actual product itself. And I think companies are recognizing that. The second reason this is important is because restaurants definitely need to innovate, right? Restaurants absolutely need to innovate. COVID created an entire new existential crisis for restaurants, primarily based off this thesis that people aren't going to be eating out anymore. Now that's going to go away. Eventually people will come back to be eating out, but for the foreseeable future, that's not going to happen. And because companies are innovating in terms of restaurants and doing more brand partnerships that allow them to actually deliver at an effective and efficient rate, we as consumers are going to become conditioned to want to get our stuff as quick as possible, right? So the point is a foundation is being laid for food delivery services that has already been ushered in through like Uber Eats and Postmates and Grubhub and things of that nature to get your food as soon as possible and to really have as little friction when people are actually going to be able to download the food. Is that what we're calling it? When Wolt launched in Helsinki in 2015, it had 10 restaurants on its platform. By 2016, it had around 100,000 app users and 450 restaurants. And I think the other reason this is so important is just like, that's the type of scale you need to compete with something like Amazon or provide Amazon-like delivery, right? Because Amazon has launched Amazon Go and Amazon with Whole Foods. So that company is trying to really make sure that you can get your food within 30 minutes, within 2 hours, right? That if you live in those big hubs, which is where they're primarily offering service right now, that you can literally have anything delivered to you, especially food related, within minutes, within hours. And that I think is also going to push the barrier for companies that are wanting to get into the direct-to-consumer business when it comes to food delivery to be even higher. And that's the thing about Amazon, bro. Like, Amazon is just a machine. Like the way they have infiltrated markets, the way they have infiltrated the way things operate is just unbelievable to me. I mean, they have literally ushered in the ability for all companies around the world that are delivering anything to recognize that if our logistics aren't up to speed, then it's going to be extremely difficult for people to not go to Amazon and buy their socks. Like if you have a sock brand and you think you have a differentiating variable in your brand and you think that is going to allow you to sell better socks, it's also a question of like how much does your brand matter in comparison to speed of delivery. And if Amazon can get, some socks that maybe aren't the best, but within 2 days and you take 2 weeks, it's hard to win that debate. Like it's really hard to win that debate. Today, Wolt boasts over 10 million users in 129 cities in 23 countries. It claims to have 27,000 restaurant and retail partners and 50,000 couriers and 2,000 employees. Now, this is important because while Amazon is huge in the US and many other countries, it isn't as well established in some corners of Europe and large swaths of Asia. Enter in Wolt, right? If Amazon isn't dominating these certain sectors, even though their business model is primed to dominate those models, other competitors are going to come up and try to be able to do other things. And the reason for this is because Amazon has literally invested in London's Deliveroo. I didn't even know that was the name of the company, but whatever. Leading a $575 million funding round in exchange for a 16% stake, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if Wolt gets a little bit of money from Amazon, a little bit of an investment. If Amazon can't beat them in the Helsinki market, maybe they just pay $1 billion and take, 17% or whatever and own part of the company so that the delivery infrastructure that they've set up can now be matched with Amazon's technology, and that can be even bigger and bigger and bigger. And as a result, Amazon ends up ruling the world. And that was the point of this story. All right, on to the next story. So, on to the next story. This one was a super, super interesting one, and I really want to talk about it and sort of understand it a little bit better. SpaceX, okay? SpaceX has launched another batch of Starlink satellites, but it missed its rocket landing coming down. I don't really care about it missing its rocket landing. Actually, it kind of adds to what I'm going to talk about here. I just, in general, want to talk about my thoughts for why I think SpaceX needs to be commended as such an unbelievably important company. It's really important for people to recognize that most people in the world complain about shit and they don't do anything about what they're complaining about, including myself, right? Everyone does. There are very few individuals who are like, yo, there's a problem and I'm going to solve it. And I'm going to really try hard to solve it. And I was watching a documentary on SpaceX the other day, and I think it's just important to convey the fact that Elon Musk is a visionary, and he tried to launch SpaceX, or the rockets that were necessary in order for SpaceX to succeed, 3 times. I think this was like 2012 or something. All of them failed. They flopped, right? They didn't take orbit. They got screwed up. Which means in the documentary it said he had one more chance left, right? Like on the 4th try, if that one didn't succeed, they were going out of business. They weren't getting any more money. They weren't going to be able to raise more funds. He had already invested like 55 or 100 million of his own money into the company. He used everything that he made off PayPal and all of his other big tech companies. So Tesla wasn't the thing that it was back in 2012. So it was all or nothing on this 4th launch. And that 4th launch worked. And they got a contract the next day from NASA for like $1.5 billion to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. That to me highlights the fact that it is unbelievably amazing that there's been only really a couple companies, and SpaceX being the biggest one, that has tried to conquer the outside world of space, and that has come so close to failure and ultimately ended up finding some level of success. The take that I'm trying to get at here is that we try to demonize, people for like we try to we complain way too much as a species about the shit that's wrong, and we blame all these like artificial things versus recognizing that trying to solve things is much more difficult than trying to just complain about things. So there's not a lot of internet in different parts of the world. What is the point of SpaceX launching Starlink? It's so that high speed quality internet can be circulating down from satellites that are part of the Starlink process across the entire planet, and it can beam it down into the places that don't have the urban infrastructure that New York or LA has. So places in Africa, places in India, things of that nature, that can actually get high-speed quality internet. Why does that matter? Because the internet is the information superhighway that has led to extreme amounts of opportunity for everybody over the past 10, 15 years. And when I mean everybody, I mean the people who have had access to the internet. Like, if you don't have access to the internet is a human right, in my opinion. The internet has become so unbelievably powerful in today's day and age that being guaranteed access to the internet matters. Like, it absolutely, and governments need to recognize that is the framework for people to be able to build opportunity for themselves that allows them to start their own little business or create their own content or gain access to information that they don't have to pay thousands of dollars for. It's all there on the internet. So for the places that don't have the internet because of technological infrastructure that does not exist in those places, SpaceX is trying to solve that problem. And to me, that's something that, that's a good thing. Like, that is a good thing. Objectively, it is a good thing. Launching those satellites up in the air when you were that close to failing and being bankrupt as a company needs to be commended. It needs to be seen as something that's inspiring. It does not need to be demonized. It needs to be understood as like a company or as a group of people that have an idea, have a vision, that are actually trying to execute it. They fail a bunch of times, and then there's a little bit of luck involved, but they try again and it works. And that sets the foundation for them to be able to do all these other amazing things. That's the story of Tesla, right? Like, they're trying to advance a world that does not use vehicles, which are the main contributor to climate change, to go away. And they have normalized electric vehicles to the point where GM just announced that they're going to have all electric vehicles by 2035. I mean, like, that's ridiculous. That's only 14 years from now. All electric vehicles, that's imagine if the world was all electric by 2030. I mean, that would take insane amounts of work over the next 10 years. But if that happens, I mean, like, Tesla is the reason that happened. If Tesla never did anything, these companies have no incentive to go electric because they didn't have the vision or the audacity to actually change their business models. So the reason I want to talk about this is because this is just an absolutely amazing accomplishment by SpaceX. They've launched 50 Starlink satellites, I think last year, or 60 of them. They launched just another group of them. SpaceX is not public yet, and the reason it's not able to go public is because it's very hard for a company to maximize returns. Like, it's not as easy to understand if you're going to get return for your money by investing in SpaceX, because a lot of missions can fail, whereas like Tesla and cars is a little bit different. Again, you're dealing with space. So it's not public yet. It's still privately held. But if it does go public, I think Elon Musk's brand that he carries, the equity of that brand and what he's been able to do with Tesla, I think he's going to be able to rally a bunch of people to believe in SpaceX and just invest and trust and have faith in the company that they will get a return, even if it's not immediate. And, when we're dealing with space, it's just very important to understand that it's space. We don't know what's out there. It's very hard for us to predict and understand what's out there. And for someone actually trying to tackle it, it's not like you're on the ground and you can understand physics. No, you're in space, bro. We're in space. And for someone to build a company that's actually trying to put stuff in space that actually helps other people, to me, that's inspiring. And for the people who don't see the inspiration in that, it's just okay, that your perspective on the world is so unbelievably minuscule for you to not find inspiration or just be in wonder of how someone could have an idea to execute that and actually do that. It's an amazing thing. And I think it needs to be understood like that. And I would like to know your comments and your thoughts on that. Am I looking too much into it? Am I thinking too deep about it? Ultimately, I think that there's not that many people solving these problems. A lot of governments aren't really doing it. You need people who are innovating. You need people who are thinking outside the box, who are doing things differently. That is the objective answer. There is no other answer. It's not stop this, stop that. No, it's move forward and figure it out. And I think SpaceX is doing that, which is incredibly important to me. Okay, let's take a break to remind you guys that this show is sponsored by Audia. Now, taking a break doesn't really matter because no one's watching the show, but the show is sponsored by Audia. So I'm going to clip this years from now, and I want people to see that I was saying I built this whole show to sponsor it with my technology company, my startup, that no one cares about yet, and no one's watching this show yet. But I'm still saying that this motherfucking show is sponsored by Audia. And one day, if Audia becomes big, this show will have been sponsored by it. So I wonder if the show will be sponsored by Audia 5 years from now if I'm doing the show. I definitely want to do the show forever because it's the Amit Kukreja show. It allows me to talk about tech and business forever. So I feel like that would be a reasonable thing to do. But nonetheless, yes, if you're interested in Audia, new tech startup, definitely go check it out. Okay, Dogecoin. It's time to talk about the Doge. I just want to give my thoughts about this, okay? This is not some crazy video that's going to have all this technical analysis about the coin, because to be honest, no one knows what the hell they're talking about. All these people, they're trying to understand what Dogecoin is. No one knows what the hell they're talking about. People are assuming they know what they're talking about, so I'm going to assume that I have some perspective to provide here, but no one truly knows, and I think that's important. If you clicked on this video or you came across this video, it's important to understand that Dogecoin... So I'll be honest, I made $100 off of it, and I sold at the right moment because now it's tanking again. But I made $100 off of it. I did not hold the line. No, I did not hodl because I needed those $100. So I was like, it's $100. Let me sell the line. But no, in general, man, Dogecoin to $1. Do I think it's possible? This is the Amit Kukreja show. I give Amit Kukreja's opinions on if I think things can happen. I don't know. I think it can go to $1, but I think Dogecoin going to $1, it doesn't require anything technical. It literally is supply and demand. And it's weird because in Doge, there's infinite supply or something, or there's way too much concentrated supply. So there's literally no value to it at all. But the idea is that if a lot of people buy it, just like GameStop, right? There really wasn't that $480 of value per share. It was not in GameStop. But if all people come together, pushes the stock, right? Blows it up. I think in order for Dogecoin to do that, it requires that type of cultural conscious. Now, can Elon be the person who ushers us into that world? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, he's already tried, and it went from 0.003 cents to 8 cents at its highs, right? That's a 1,500% increase. That's amazing. That's awesome. But the average person wasn't buying it at 0.003. I saw it. I should have bought $10,000 worth of it, but I would have made $200,000 off that. But I didn't do that because I didn't know what the hell Dogecoin was. Same thing with Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin is the same process. Obviously, now it's at 50 grand, and it's absolutely exploding. But Bitcoin also has a limited amount of supply. I believe there's only $21 billion worth of it worldwide, or 21 billion or million Bitcoins. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which means you have to do a lot of intense work to actually mine it, which creates all the supply and demand because it's a limited resource, kind of like gold in some respects. With Doge, that doesn't really exist. Now, it was made as a joke currency, but if that joke currency turns into a more efficient way to distribute, like to sell and pay for stuff, right? It becomes what Elon is calling the world's currency. That would be an amazing thing only if everyone bought into Doge as a legitimate entity, right? As a coin that actually has the potential to do that. The problem with that is I don't know if that's possible. Like the same thing with GameStop, right? Like it only lasted for a couple of days and then it bursted. And yeah, maybe, you know, Robinhood played a role in that, but at the end of the day, it happened and then it was gone. So when I think about Dogecoin, I think about everyone in the world kind of like, or not everyone, but a lot of people having to come together and actually provide the catalyst of buying the actual resource in order to drive the price up. I don't know what's going to trigger that, right? And that's the thing I'm trying to figure out, because I have money I can invest, right? If I buy it at, well, like 5 cents right now and it turns to $1, that money could change my life. The question becomes, do I sell it at 55 cents? Because already that money would change my life, right? If I put let's do the math right now. If I put $10,000 into Doge at 0.05, which is what it is at right now, that's 200,000 coins. 200,000 times 0.55 cents is already like 100,000, right? Because times Google is so weird. It's $100,000, right? It's a lot of money, and that's a lot of money for me to the point where I would probably sell, right? That's 110 grand. I should have done that math on my own, but like I'm not the best at math. That's 110 grand, right? So now I would have to be insanely greedy, in my opinion. I don't say that in a negative way, but pretty greedy to be like, I'm going to wait till it hits $4 or $5. Like, if I think the investment if I think the coin is actually rising like a Bitcoin type of trend, that would happen. That requires either two things. A, massive amounts of conviction, kind of like 2011 with Bitcoin at 100 to 200 bucks. You're like, I'll look back at it at 2021. I don't care. That type of conviction. Or a collective orientation and belief that everyone in the world is hopping into this, like it was for GameStop, but again, that was short-lived. So that type of collective orientation has to last for the long term if Bitcoin or if Dogecoin is ever going to reach $1. Because that, you know, with people buying it right now, when it goes up to 20, 30 cents, people are going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank accounts or in their brokerage accounts. And they're going to have to make a decision. Do I sell, right, and get that money, which is incredibly valuable, which kind of defeats the point of owning Dogecoin, because the point for it is to be a different currency. So if you sell it and just start using the dollar again, like then the dollar is the main currency. Like the point to own the coin is because you want to not only use it one day, but because it's going to be so valuable if it's the world's currency that it'll be way more than 55 cents a coin. It's just a question of now, can the world collectively believe in that? I don't know. I think the overarching thesis that will allow that to happen, it can't just be Elon, because I mean he has influence, but I don't know if he would have to come out publicly and say he's buying the coin, and he's already said that he's not going to buy the coin because there's too much concentrated. Like a couple of people own billions of dollars worth of the coin, so if it goes up more, they get ridiculously rich, and the people that are left holding the bag when they sell, because if someone sells, someone has to buy, are the people who bought it at 6 cents, right? And that's not going to be worth it. Same thing that happened with GameStop. So can Dogecoin go to $1? Yes. Will it? I find it very hard to believe it will. Now, I think a couple of years from now, if this same energy exists, we're going to see a gradual increase. Right now, it's been at 5 to 8 cents for the last month. If it holds until the end of 2021, I think going until 2022, it might have a chance to go to 17 to 18 cents. Now, when I say that, people are like, what are you talking about? It should be at like 30 cents next week. And it's like, I just don't know if that's very realistic. Right? Like, yes, we're seeing crazy things with Bitcoin, but again, there's other factors there. To imagine that much of an increase over something is what we all want, right? Is what, and I say all in quotes, because like all of us, if we all wanted that, the price would already be there, because all of us would be buying it and holding it, right? But all of us are not holding the line, and that is the fundamental problem to me in order to get Dogecoin to get up to $1. So I'm going to make some more videos in the future, because I do want to get a little bit more technical with it. I know I said the technical stuff doesn't matter, but maybe it does. I want to do some more research and actually be able to give some valuable content on if Dogecoin could potentially reach $1. But for now, this is just my opinion. I think it requires massive amounts of conviction from people and massive amounts of collective awareness from people that also have that conviction in order for it to get there. And maybe I'm missing something technical, but outside of those two factors, I don't see it getting past 10, 15 cents. And even that, it would be amazing from where it is right now, which is at 5 cents. So the world needs to hold the line. Otherwise, the line is going to end. And I don't have a metaphor to complete this, but yeah, more videos on Dogecoin probably coming in the future. All right, guys, that's it for the show today. Today was a little bit of a shorter episode, but I hope you guys have enjoyed. As always, the show is sponsored by Audia. Go check it out, my new tech startup that is in the description. And if you guys enjoyed, definitely please like and subscribe. It really helps the content show up on the organic algorithms for YouTube. And yeah, I appreciate everyone that listened and watched for today. See you on the next episode. Bye-bye.